The following material has been classified as a core secret by the United States National Security Agency and is only available to the directors of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, and the Centers for Disease Control, and the commanding officers of the Office of Naval Intelligence and the United States Army Medical Research Institute for Infectious Diseases. The unauthorized disclosure of this material to individuals other than those specified constitutes a felony under the Espionage Act of 1917. The following transcript is a reproduction of the comments entered into the logbook of the USS Scorpion, a U.S. Navy nuclear submarine which lost contact with the U.S. military between May 20th and May 21st of 1968, after completing its surveillance of a Soviet naval task force. The heavily damaged logbook was covertly recovered from the Scorpion's wreckage by divers from the Office of Naval Intelligence on November 18th, 1998, 33 years after the wreckage's discovery. For security reasons, only the comments entered into the logbook will be included in this transcript. All other information, such as that pertaining to the speed and the location of the vessel, have been censored in accordance with the Department of Defense policy. May 15th, 1968. Today has been relatively uneventful. The only remotely atypical occurrence was the removal of an interior communications electrician for health reasons. It appears that the electrician, I believe his name is Joseph Underwood, had come down with an affliction which closely resembles the flu. Tomorrow we depart Rota and head out for the Mediterranean Sea, much to the dismay of my crew, who have been enjoying our brief stay in Spain. May 16th, 1968. Our ship's departure from the Mediterranean Sea had been successful. We are set to rendezvous with the John C. Calhoun, a ballistic missile submarine, and provide noise cover for it as we both head out to the Atlantic Ocean so as to avoid detection by Soviet attack submarines. May 17th, 1968. We have received orders to observe and listen to a Soviet naval task force, which includes a guided missile destroyer and an Echo II class submarine. I must say, our new assignment sounds rather interesting. In other news, I have observed that some members of the crew are beginning to display extremely erratic behavior, some of which borders on paranoia. They are over-suspicious of one another and often describe hearing strange noises. I can't really blame them though. After all, we are fighting a virtual war, and it is better to be over-vigilant than to be too lax. May 18th, 1968. As we draw nearer to the Soviet task force, it seems more and more likely to me that we may have a traitor in our midst. Many of my men have reported a feeling that they are being watched, and the sheer amount of complaints I am receiving is far too large to be a coincidence. May 19th, 1968. We have been experiencing major problems with our communications equipment, and though there is a fair probability that this may simply be a result of Soviets testing out new jamming techniques, the CIA had released a report on new jamming technology under development by the Russian Air Force. But I cannot shake the feeling that there may be foul play at work. And perhaps more importantly, I too have been experiencing the feeling of being watched, even when I am alone in my cabin. May 20th, 1968. Something has gone terribly wrong. Our communications equipment has all but ceased to work, and now a small fraction of my crew have been experiencing what I believe to be terrifying hallucinations, which have left them screaming in fear in their cabins. The unceasing howls make it close to impossible to sleep. Dark shadows and eerie noises pervade every nook and corner of our vessel. May God deliver us from whatever evil lies in this damn ship. May 21st, 1968. 3 men are dead, and they were lying in their cabins, screaming with terror, when suddenly, a dark red liquid, which we later identified as blood, began pouring out of their eyes, ears, mouths, and even their pores. After about 5 minutes of hemorrhaging, they began to vomit a putrid, greenish-yellow pus and eventually fell unconscious. 2 died of blood loss, but 1 choked to death on his own bodily fluids. More than 3/4 of my crew are in the grip of terrifying hallucinations, but I am beginning to wonder whether they are hallucinations after all. I feel as though I'm in a constant state of fear, and I can sense an evil presence watching my every move. On May 22nd, 1968. My ship is overflowing with blood. Everywhere I look is blood. Horrible sounds of suffering and terror penetrate every room on my boat. I can hear the tortured screams of children. I see the terrible, dark figures of horrid phantoms. I see their long, spindly arms reach out and tear the blood from my crew. And worst of all, I hear the thunder. But I know that it wasn't thunder. I know what those crashes are. And I know that, in my madness, with the turn of a key and a push of a button, I must have brought them upon the earth. I am so sorry. The submarine log ends here. It is presumed that the Scorpion was crushed by the water pressure 2 days after the end of the log. The following is an excerpt from a report prepared jointly by analysts from the CDC, the DIA, and the ONI in 2006 on the events that occurred at the USS Scorpion. And upon the inspection of the recovered portion of the wreckage, hazmat teams from the CDC were able to identify a dormant pathogen, the likes of which had never been seen before. After closer analysis of the bacterium, it was determined that, using recombinant DNA, the germ was engineered to force the body of the infected individual to produce an immense amount of epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, the hormone most closely associated with fear. In addition, it targeted the amygdala, the section of the brain which processes memory, decision-making, and emotional reactions, especially that of fear. It also causes disseminated intravascular coagulation, which in turn leads to severe hemorrhaging and improper clotting. This will usually lead to death due to blood loss and shock. Based on this and the DIA's analysis of the ship's log, the pathogen which wiped out the crew of the Scorpion was in fact intentionally engineered to gradually induce its victim into a state of intense terror, beginning with paranoia and slowly increasing in severity, forcing the infected to experience their greatest fears, and eventually killing them via blood loss, in a manner similar to that of African hemorrhagic fevers, such as Marburg and Ebola. The bacterium is likely the product of the now well-known Soviet biological weapons program, which is known to have weaponized 11 other biological agents, including Yersinia pestis, and the bacterium that causes plague, and variola, the bacteria that causes smallpox. The pathogen discovered on the Scorpion was codenamed the Scorpion Syndrome, and was studied extensively by the CDC. The US government engaged in secret talks with the Russian Federation on the extent of old Soviet biological weapons programs, eventually concluding that one sample of the Scorpion Syndrome bacterium would be kept at the CDC's Biosafety Level 4 laboratory. However, the US has never been able to confirm that all of their weaponized stocks of the disease were destroyed. A note to the readers. While this story is fictional, almost all of the science and history which is not obviously a product of my imagination is accurate. Though the Scorpion Syndrome disease is false, the Soviet Union did engage in the biological weapons program, which I described in the story. Additionally, the USS Scorpion was a real nuclear submarine which went missing on May 20th, 1968. All the names and the dates in the story are accurate, and all medical and military terminology, intelligence agencies, and military units have been factually represented.